I did the first assembly of the smoke unit, and we discovered a small wiring error, and I've made a correction to the PC board on one unit, and I'm going to test that today. I'm going to do a volt test. I'm going to test the voltage to the heater. I'm going to use a small amount of volts going in. I think I'll probably start with 5 volts going in. It normally likes 9 or 10, but I'm going to start with 5, and then I'm going to measure the temperature at the heater, and well, not the temperature, but the voltage going in, and we should be regulating at a constant number, and I should be able to tune that between 7, 8, and 9 volts. And this is the regulator. This is a variable resistor for reference, so I can adjust this up and down, and it works with the thermistor to tell this LM317 chip how much voltage to pass through. So I'm going to start with 5 volts and have this adjusted at certain resistances. I may start with 10 or 50 or 100 or 200 and 5 volts, and then try to see what I'm getting out of the heater, and that will help me understand as we crank up the volts, how much am I getting here. Like I said, we should get like 9.5 as a max. With my earlier prototype, I was getting 7.5 volts as the max, and I felt that was a little low. I'd like to get closer to 9, but we'll see what I can do with this new product we have, and that'll be part of the morning test. This is the prototype of how this was built early on. Here's another prototype of how this was built using what we call breadboards and plain old, perf board. But now that we have our design and it bolts on, it's pretty exciting. Anyway, another point I wanted to make while I was here with my little camera, let's see if I can turn my light on. I can. Someone asked, why am I working on the Atlantic, the 2-wheel drive engine, which is the most basic, lowest level engine that Flyer made. And I have to say, I don't know why I'm obsessed with the Atlantic chassis. I mean, I do have a few chassis, I do have some tenders, and I did build a few in my day over different operations. This one unit here represents a very early model where the reverse is actually in the boiler. You can tell there would be a slot somewhere in here, a slot for this lever to lock out reverse. This one doesn't have it, neither does this one, so they weren't for that. But this is an early 300 type. It has a headlight, but as you can see, there's no smoke because the reverse unit is bolted in there. It does not have access to the gear as we would like normally, so there's no gear for the smoke. So it's at a very disadvantage from upgrade points of view. Plus it has the AC motor. Yes, and as you can see, this is the wide armature field, so it's a non-Pullmore, so it's a weaker. It's the standard motor with the reverse, and for that reason this engine is not popular. This frame is not popular. And here we can compare it with the most popular, I would say. This was recently arrived. I paid money for this. Can you believe it? It's a motor, right? And it is a Pullmore motor. It does not have Pullmore tires, but it has a Pullmore motor. It has the gear and the rod and the piston, and it has the vintage smokehouse and AC motor with brushes. And this one would only have 2 wires coming in. This one will have 4 wires, and look at this, even a 5th wire for the smoke heat to come separate, so it would be a hotter smoke. So this is fairly later, but look how dirty it is. Oh Jesus. Let's see if it runs too. As we move on, we can see some of these variations I have adapted. For example, this chassis and this chassis are identical. Okay? This reverse has been removed. I've made an adapter plate that bolts to my housing for smoke, and then I can bolt the adapter plate to the frame, and that will give this engine smoke. And with an LED I can have a headlight, and I can put any one of my variations of motors. This is the DC motor, excuse me, that's the AC motor. There's another AC motor. This is the AC motor converted to DC, and this is the American Flyer DC motor. So various motors are available. You can put them on, create them, mix and match. But even the lowest, I put a DC motor on, and I'm working on the other pieces for this chuff and puff sound, all the other elements. And these engines can be brought up to today's standards as far as next generation S gauge. So here's the most basic model that you will find. Sometimes I get them and they're incomplete. In this case, this has the gear and the shaft, but no smoke, no piston, no motor. So he needs help. Here's another one. Oops, I dropped something. He has the gear, but nothing else. But he also is drilled for 2 holes, if you can see them. Both holes are drilled through, both holes are drilled through. So he could take that smoke, or he could take an adapter. And another thing we've done with these gears is use them to trigger our sound systems. In this case, I could go to, both of these engines could go both. And this one, they could all, see they have the Bosch for the gear, and they have the hole to mount the smoke. So all 4 of these engines could take vintage smoke, and then engine of choice, motor of choice, okay? Then here's another one. He has a gear, and he could take it. So I have several, and we may find that a majority of them are that way. However, these 2, when you look down, there's no hole, and the hole is a different depth, so it really doesn't work well. And this one too. This came with lead weights, as these others probably did too, for balance. But as you can see, there's no hole to mount a smoke. So in this case, what I have in for my 3D smoke, I have this adapter for the standard frame of Flyer, and I could use this frame and bolt a smoke house to it, and I could have smoke, could have smoke on this frame if I wanted, or I can use the vintage smoke. Either way. But with this device, it doesn't fit well because there's only one screw, so I can't use that adapter. But I have come up with a different adapter. I actually have 2. This is one that snaps in place. You would have had the smoke bolted to it first, and then you would bolt to it from the bottom up. And this screw hole here lines up with this through hole here, and they all have that through hole because that's where the rivet came for the weights. So this is another method where I actually have a clamp on the sides and I screw in the back. But as you can see, these are different designs. This was a flat all the way across, and there's no access to the gear. So this guy is the worst disadvantage, Atlantic. These guys can't do the smoke, but they still have the Boss. Okay, so if I can mount the smoke, my smoke, that's fine. But now I have no means to make the sounds and the puff. I need a trigger pulse. So one thing I've done is I've developed a cam that I can bolt onto this gear, and with a switch back here, I get a pulse that goes dinka dinka dinka, and that will puff smoke and make a chuff sound. So I will get a replication of the puff and chuff digitally, even though I don't have the place to mount the smoke system. I can do it with that gear. If it's missing the gear, we have designed a gear that will fit. And we have that in place on this engine, and it's been tested and it works. So we have either a cam if it has a gear, or a gear that has cams on it if it doesn't have the gear, but it has the boss. If it doesn't have the boss, then we have a different technique. I've proven it on a Pacific, and I'll show you that another time, but we have that too. So the Atlantics, no matter which model you have, could be updated, made, one, more reliable, two, better use of electricity, more efficient, and more fun, in my opinion, more fun. The other thing that we've come up with is what we call the firebox or a bulkhead. And these hide all of the motors on the back, but it also has a spot for those 3 squares right there. You can put in flickering LEDs and put a lens over that, and it looks like a firebox. The holes are made for the thrust levers, the throttle levers, the reverse, and some gauge knobs, valves. And that's the water gauge outline and the pressure gauge outline. And we print these in different colors, and we can do different things with them. So 3D printed parts, you see them here and there. This is part of what we can bring to this, plus the smoke. And we're adapting also the Pacifics. Here you can see a Pacific with the motor. It has the boss, no gear. It has 2 holes, so it's ready. You could go vintage, you could go new, you could put our gear on it. Same here, no gear, but it has 2 holes. This guy's probably the hardest one to adapt to, but we've done it. This is very similar to the Royal Blue. This is older. You can see it has the brass buttons. I have a plate very similar to this plate that's designed to fit on here, and use one of those screw holes right there. So you can adapt it for smoke. You can remove this light, put the adapter on, put our smoke on. So now right away you got smoke. We also have the same device here for getting the trigger. We have a different device for this engine, and it will also, it's actually on this type of frame, so it'll fit on this frame. So we can give all of these engines that were the least accessory adaptable, we can adapt them to puff and chuff digital, smoke digital, and we can increase the reliability of the DC, or the AC vintage motor by using either a DC conversion, a DC armature, or a complete DC can motor, which looks like a beer can with the shaft on it. So all of these adaptions and the gear, this lever here, the smoke here, they all switch across. The differences are what type of adapter do you need for the chassis that you have. The other thing I wanted to share with you was the notion of the tender. And I was running just yesterday my 283, 287, 282, and you know, it goes through a switch and stops. Then I have to hit reverse, it backs up and stops. Hit forward again, it takes off, and maybe it gets through if I'm going fast enough. And it's because they have every other wheel, right, is active. You have 4 wheels, and actually 2 on the same here and 2 on the same here. So we have this, and I know you've seen this, shown it before. This is our all-wheel pickup truck. So you would take these trucks off, you pop the rivets out, take those trucks away, and you install these trucks with a little plastic pin that comes down and it screws in. And these trucks, one, they have a little bit of suspension to them, but also their wheels are isolated on the shaft. So there's a voltage can come in here from one track, and voltage could come in here from the other track, and they don't cross, they don't short out. So you now have these 2 wheels and these 2 wheels, 4 wheels picking up power from one track and 4 wheels picking up power from the other track. So if you drive through a switch and you run over that plastic part, this wheel or both of these wheels, or either one, would pick power up and you would not have that engine stopping. This happened to me yesterday 10 times. It made me nuts. I'm going to change that tender. I know. I'm going to put this type of wheel on that tender and it will not do that again. So I get my, this is my longer chassis for the Royal Blue, adapting to that. I got that started. Here's another one. This is for the Atlantic. As you can see, the parts are all identical basically. They have a spot to bolt to a coupler or a connector using a 440 brass insert, threaded insert, and these are reliable, easy to put together, and it makes the whole experience of running your train consistent. It doesn't drop out, it doesn't stop in the switches, and all of this other stuff then operates nicer and smoother. This is the direction, and I'm working hard now to get my smoke done. We already have Puff driving this motor with a switch, and we also have Chuff Sounds, a soundboard driven by the same trigger. So Puff and Chuff, smoke fan, all-wheel pickup on any engine, any chassis, and we're working our way through Atlantics and Pacifics. Of course, this would be the Chicago Northwest, the 290s, New Haven, the K5, which is a beautiful engine, and the Hudson, which is also a beautiful engine. All of those engines could use these same parts, just as all the Atlantics could use the same part. And we have I have 3 Northerns in the box, and we're going to address those engines and tenders next. Okay, another point I want to make while we're here is, if someone was energetic, and if someone wanted a unique tender, you can print a blank chassis with these holes and these holes for mounting. Then you could simply take these hole mountings here, pull them up, and you could design the sides and top of any style tender, long or short, and fit it on your 3D chassis, or we could do it for you. And we probably will have blank plastic chassis soon, just for that reason. Custom chassis, not to say you couldn't do that with the engine. Thing is interesting here, 1955, 307. Pretty cool. Always see a date stamp, you know. Reminds me of searching for old Corvettes. But we have this tang here, and we have this boss here, and that's how we bolt these engines in, and they all are the same. You even have the tang and the bolt on all the Pacifics. They're in a different location, but once you have those locations, there's no reason why we can't make that as a template, and we could then work up to building a chassis that fits to that, building an engine that fits to that chassis. You could build an engine. You could build a 2-wheel engine. You could change the size of the wheels, make this something that wasn't made, a different style. I don't know. They're out there. I've seen them. I have books on it. So we want to get to that point by the end of 2022. That's our game plan. I know. I didn't waste time. I just felt like talking, but I got to get back to work. I'm being looked at by the boss. We don't want that. She's got something wrong. Let me see. I'll talk to you later. Bye.